So how did this happen to you? Woke up one day, cold, pale, thought I was sick. Turned out it was something else entirely.
Killer Frost, by definition, is one of the strongest characters on our show.
Don't make me frosty. You wouldn't like me when I'm frosty.
She has these amazing icy abilities. She's extremely strong.
I think this concept of power is sort of permeates throughout our season. I think it illuminates a deeper part of a person's character, who they are, and how they choose to use their power.
Comics, she was a killer. That's where the name comes from. Obviously, we can't have a psychopathic killer on our team, but we wanted to play with that and how this version, the Earth 1 version, could sort of steer away from that and change and be different than what Caitlin Snow feels like her destiny is. They're very supportive whenever we want to go down different paths with the characters that they've established. So it gives us the ability to get these characters to explore storylines that they haven't in the comics.
There's not really been another Killer Frost on screen, so we get to do everything first, and we get to play, and we get to really experiment.
It is pretty nice when you start to see like characters morph because of our show, the way that they show up in the comic book. It is meta. It is meta, but it's a lot of fun to see that happen.
Stay still, we're gonna get your help.
That's me, right there.
What are you doing? Kitty, honey, don't!
We knew at the end of season 4 that we had posed a question. How was Killer Frost really created? And for what purpose? That leads directly into the story of what's really wrong with Caitlin, our family issues. And that's all what season 5 is about. It's about thinking my mom is a villain.
That's why you're here, isn't it? If this is some elaborate, possibly nefarious cover-up, it must be Mom's doing. It's not like she's ever had your best interests at heart.
You always do this.
Well, your mom's not a villain. It's about thinking, my dad, he's a great human being. Newsflash, your dad is bad.
What did you do to me?
I wasn't gonna let the ALS manifest in you like it did in me.
So you used experimental cryogenic gene therapy on your own daughter?
I'd already done it on myself.
Really bad.
Her father realized that he had this disease and that Caitlin was going to get it, so what is he willing to do to stop that? And what started out as a way to not only cure himself, but really to protect his child, turned into creating the Killer Frost persona, the icicle persona in himself.
Like any great parent, he wanted to make the world a better place for her. He wanted to cure her of this horrible disease. Thomas Snow's intentions at first were really great.
What started out from a place of good intentions turned into, unleashing the sort of inner demons in both of them.
In exploring Killer Frost's origins, it means Caitlin has to go in, dig deep, and explore her own psychology.
If you look at Caitlin's parents, they're both extremely intelligent. They're scientists, and you can see why Caitlin would be as thoughtful and focused and methodical, because that's the world she grew up in.
You must not use these powers under any circumstances.
Caitlin got into science because she wanted to be closer to her cold mom. And for Thomas, it's, oh, he's the warm one. You imagine at a point when she was still 8 years old, before all the ALS stuff was discovered and went down, and he kind of went rogue, father and daughter shared scientific factoids and whatnot.
It's a game my dad and I used to play. He would teach me the periodic table, but he would let me make up my own fictional compounds and elements.
Nerdonium?
He used to say it's what made us so smart.
Science had already helped her bond to Dad, but it wasn't working on Mom.
Caitlin and her mom don't have a great relationship. They're not very close. And Caitlin, I think, has sort of learned to survive on her own. She's a strong woman. She's an independent woman. I think that a lot of that did come from the loss of her father.
So now to have this guy that she idolized come back and to see really just the negative aspects of the scientific experiment, that, you know, having Killer Frost and what she felt like she was fated to become, and seeing that play out firsthand with this father that she's always idolized and loved beyond measure.
Scar tissue is a lot more sensitive than regular tissue.
This isn't you!
It is now.
End of season 3, when Killer Frost really took over, she was a bad guy. She was not interested in being nice to Team Flash.
Go!
When she went to Earth 2 and saw the Killer Frost for the first time and what Destiny had for her, seeing that version of who she could become, with ultimately experiencing it, it was the lure to use that power and the lure to sort of go to the dark side. But having the relationship and the friends at Star Labs sort of pull her out of that and show her that there was another way.
If Caitlin were to give into the dark side of Killer Frost, she would be lost forever.
She had to go down the wrong path and kiss up to the turning point and then sort of course correct, but then she's sort of course correcting in a different way to bring her back to where she should be.
I think there was still a piece of Caitlin inside of her, a piece of that goodness.
So I think Caitlin Frost is a reality for her, but Killer Frost isn't.
I think Caitlin believes that Icicle can be redeemed. She's a part of Team Flash, and if there's anything we know about Team Flash, as heroes, they believe in the best in humanity. That's their legacy to the world, for us all to step up to the plate and be just a little bit better of people than we think we're capable of. That's what heroes do. They inspire us.
My powers came from you. Killer Frost is my cure.
Killer Frost.
You might know her by a different name, Keone.
One of my favorite things this season that's a new facet is the Keone aspect of Killer Frost.
Keone, a Greek goddess, a child of the North Wind whose realm was ice and snow.
Keone. Killer Frost.
We found this correlation with Keone, the Greek goddess of snow and the North Wind, who also had real problems with fathers, with men in her life.
That means that whatever Thomas was doing, he knew that there were two of you.
Also stands to reason that Thomas was there at the point of creation of Killer Frost.
Melt.
The most important thing that's ever happened to Caitlin wasn't the emergence of Killer Frost. It was the disappearance of Killer Frost.
I have to get her back.
She fell in love with the idea of being able to help the team in a way that she's not only able to as a scientist. So to take that from her, it gave us a huge opportunity to tell the story about, is it better to have powers or not? And is it their responsibility to get rid of the powers from metahumans?
The strongest person isn't the person who wields the power. The strongest person is the character who knows when to wield the power and when to restrain from using it. And that's Caitlin.
I imagine, though, Caitlin suppressing Killer Frost was really more of a coping mechanism, you know? I think Killer Frost comes out when Caitlin needs her the most. And, you know, I think for the most part, Caitlin's really been in control and able to take care of herself, and, you know, Killer Frost shows up when stuff gets rough.
In previous seasons, her becoming Killer Frost was always motivated by some emotional response, but we wanted to sort of move in a direction where it became more symbiotic, where she could call upon Killer Frost whenever she needed her, or sometimes just to talk.
They don't have to just pass notes anymore. They can actually speak to one another.
After losing her father and her relationship with her mother, you know, this desire within Caitlin to find family and have family. So she gets to learn about this whole side of herself in her childhood. It's like having a twin, you know, who you didn't know about, and then comes back into your life, and you're able to learn things about yourself that you'd never known.
For Caitlin, the question is, what is the end of her hero's journey? And one could say that, oh, it must be becoming Killer Frost and learning how to be a good person and fitting with Team Flash. That's not the end of her journey. The true part of her journey that I think we're always trying to get towards is a true symbiosis between Caitlin and Killer Frost.
Caitlin is taking more ownership, and I think we're getting to see her be stronger and more proactive about both her relationship with Killer Frost, but learning more about her father. Ultimately, I think he did her a disservice in not allowing those two to coexist earlier in Caitlin's life. And now that Caitlin is learning more about Killer Frost is more present. And I'm looking forward to a time when Caitlin and Killer Frost can sort of happily coexist.
Hey, stranger.
Hey.
Well, we sure have a lot to talk about.